Let me tell you something, and I need you to listen the whole way through, because if you stop in the middle you'll think I'm a liar. My name is Vayan Tall. I was an engineer once, not a soldier. I want that on the record before anything else because the way the songs tell it now, you'd think I marched out of my mother's pod with a rifle in my hand. I didn't. I fixed things. Pumps, coils, the gravity plating on the lower decks that always sang a flat note when it was about to fail. That was me. A man with grease under his claws and a bad back from crawling through service ducts. And I'm telling you this story because I was there. Not in a book, not in a recording someone cleaned up afterward. I was there, on the day we limped to the humans with nothing left but our shame, and I watched them do the thing nobody else in the galaxy would do. So let me start where it actually started, not with the victory, with the defeat, because you can't understand the one without sitting in the other for a while. We are the Sethari. If you've heard of us at all, you've heard of us the way you hear of a city after a fire by what's left of the name. 3 generations ago we were proud. Not arrogant, mind you, just settled in ourselves. We had 4 worlds and the moons that hung over them, and we had ships that we built slow and built right. Our engines weren't the fastest in the arm of the galaxy, but they didn't fail. Our hulls weren't the prettiest, but they held. We were the people you'd trust to deliver cargo across a war zone and not lose a crate. That was our reputation. Reliable, boring even. Boring was a thing we were proud of, because boring meant nobody died. Then the Koran came. I won't waste your time pretending I understand what the Koran wanted. Nobody does. They came out of the dark past the Velvet Drift with ships shaped like nothing should be shaped, all angles that hurt to look at, and they didn't talk. That was the worst part. In the old wars, the ones in the histories, at least the enemy wanted something you could name, land, or out a grudge. The Koran wanted us gone, and they never once said why. They just arrived and they started cutting. I remember the first attack on the outer station, Droval Reach, because I had a cousin posted there. Sweet boy. Couldn't fix a leaking valve to save his life, but he could sing, the kind of voice that made the old aunties cry into their cups. The Koran hit Droval Reach, and it was over in less time than it takes me to tell you about it. No survivors. No bodies even to bury. Just a smear of debris where a station used to be, and a frequency on the comm channel that nobody could shut off. A sound like metal grinding on bone, broadcasting on loop for 6 days until our engineers finally jammed it. That was the start. After that, it was 3 years of giving ground. 3 years of every plan our admirals made turning to ash the moment it touched a Koran hull. You have to understand what that does to a people. We didn't just lose battles. We lost the idea of ourselves. We'd always been the steady ones, the ones who held. And here we were, holding nothing, falling back from world to world, and every retreat carved a little more out of us. By the 3rd year, there was a look people got. I called it the Droval look, after my cousin's station. Eyes open but nobody home behind them. The look of someone who stopped expecting tomorrow to be different from today. I had that look. I'll admit it. I caught my own reflection in a polished bulkhead one shift, and I didn't recognize the man staring back. I was assigned to the Hollow Tide by then. Old freighter, converted to a troop carrier when the war ate through our real warships. She was a good ship in her bones. I knew her bones. I'd crawled through every one of them, but she was tired. We were all tired. We'd just come off the loss at Senate's Crossing, which is a polite way of saying we'd run from Senate's Crossing while it burned, and we were down to one functioning engine cluster, a reactor that needed coaxing like a sick child, and a hull breach on Deck 9 that we'd sealed with foam and prayer. Our captain was a woman named Resh Voronai. You'll hear that name again before this is done, so remember it, Captain Resh. She was old by the time I served under her, scales gone gray at the edges, one eye clouded from an old burn she never explained. She didn't talk much. She didn't have to. When Captain Resh said hold, the deck held. When she said run, you ran and you didn't ask why. It was Captain Resh who made the call that everyone else was too proud to make. We were in a council, not a real council, just the senior crew crammed into the wreck of what used to be the officers' mess, the air recycler wheezing, somebody's hand light flickering because we couldn't spare a full panel. The maps were bad. The numbers were worse. We had maybe 4 months of fight left in the whole Sethari fleet, and that was generous. Somebody, I think it was Corin, our weapons chief, a hothead even then, somebody said we should make a last stand at home. Go down swinging at the cradle world, die well. And Captain Resh, she let him finish. She let everybody finish. She had this way of letting silence sit until people were uncomfortable enough to actually think. Then she said, there's a world out past the Quell Expanse. The humans hold it, a repair station. They take all comers. Somebody laughed. I won't say who, because he didn't live long enough to be embarrassed by it, and that's its own kind of mercy. But somebody laughed and said something about the monkeys, the dirt crawlers, the new little species that had clawed their way up out of one mudball planet and somehow gotten themselves a seat at the galactic table. Captain Resh didn't laugh. She looked at the man who'd laughed with her one clear eye, and she said, when was the last time anyone turned us away to die and you laughed about it? The mess got very quiet. We've asked the Davrin for help, she said. They sent regrets. We've asked the Kelt Collective. They sent a bill. We've asked everyone who's anyone, and every one of them did the math on us and decided we weren't worth the cost of the ink. She tapped the dead map with one claw. The humans run a repair yard. They've never turned a ship away. Not one. I checked. 40 years they've been out here and not one ship turned away, not Davrin, not Kelt, not pirate, not enemy. You come broken, they fix you. You pay what you can, or you pay later, or you don't pay at all and they wave you off anyway. Nobody understands it. I don't understand it. But I'm out of better ideas, and so are you. And so I am taking what's left of this ship to the humans, and any man who'd rather die well than live like a beggar can take a pod and go home, and I'll think no less of him. Nobody took a pod. I want to be honest with you about my own heart in that moment, because the songs make us all sound brave and we weren't. I didn't think, yes, the humans will save us. I didn't think anything that grand. I just thought, I'm so tired and she's offering me one more day and I'll take it. That's all heroism is sometimes. A tired man taking one more day. The Quell Expanse is an ugly stretch of nothing. No stars worth nomming, just dust and the occasional dead rock, and the kind of long dark that gets into your head if you stare at it too long. We crossed it in 11 days, which felt like 11 years, the reactor groaning the whole way, me down in the guts of the ship talking to it like you talk to a frightened animal. Easy. Easy now. Just a little further. On the 11th day, the human station came up on our scopes, and I'll never forget what the bridge crew said when it resolved, because I had the comm open while I worked. They said it's enormous. It was. The humans called it Anchor 9. I learned the name later. It wasn't pretty, not the way the Davrin built things, all spires and symmetry. It was a great ugly wheel of a place, scarred and patched and added onto, with ships of 40 species docked along its rim like nursing young. There were Kelt cruisers next to pirate skiffs next to a Davrin pleasure, yacht next to something I didn't even recognize, all of them in some state of repair, and human work pods buzzing between them like insects and floodlights everywhere. And noise. Even through the hull I swear I could feel the noise of the place, the hammering, the welding, the sheer industry of it. It looked like a junkyard. It looked like the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. We hailed them. We expected the runaround. We expected forms and fees and a queue and the long, slow brush-off that everyone gives a dying people, because dying people are bad customers. They tend not to pay. Instead, a human voice came on the channel, young and bored and chewing something, and it said, Anchor 9 traffic, this is dock control. You're the Sethari boat, yeah. You sound rough. We got a slot open on the east rim, follow the green lights, mind the Kelt freighter on your way in, he's a nervous Parker. Welcome in, we'll get you sorted. That was it, we'll get you sorted. Like we were a leaky pipe and not the last gasp of a dying nation. Captain Resh on the bridge said nothing, but I heard later that she had to turn her face away from the crew for a moment. The old woman who never showed anything. She had to turn away. I want to tell you about the first human I ever met up close, because she ruined every idea I'd ever had about them, and I think she ruined it on purpose. We docked. The whole crew was braced for something. I don't know what, contempt, pity, a customs officer with a clipboard. What we got was a hatch that cycled open onto a noisy, brightly lit gantry that smelled of hot metal and something sweet I couldn't place, and a human waiting for us with her hands on her hips. She was small. That was the first thing. Humans are small, smaller than us, smaller than most of the galaxy, this soft little species with no scales and no plating and skin you could open with a careless claw. This one came up to about my chest. She had hair the color of rust tied back out of her face, and a streak of grease across one cheek, and she wore a work suit covered in pockets, and she was holding a slate and frowning at it. She looked up at me, at all of us, at the column of exhausted, half-broken Sethari soldiers and crew coming down the gantry. And the first words out of her mouth were not welcome or state your business or payment in advance. She said, "Who's your engineer?" I blinked at her, we all did. "Your engineer," she said again, a little impatient now. "Somebody on this boat keeps that reactor lit, and whoever it is, I want to shake their hand because that thing should have gone critical 4 days ago and it didn't, which means somebody up there." She jabbed a thumb at the hollow tide groaning above us. "Is very, very good at their job. So, who is it?" And the whole column turned and looked at me. I've been holding that reactor together with spit and bad language for 11 days across the Quell expanse, and I hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch, and I'd stopped expecting anyone to notice or care, because we were a dying people and dying people don't get noticed. And here was this small, soft creature, half my size, the first being in 3 years to look at me, and see not a beggar, not a refugee, not the droval look, but a man who was good at his job. I said that would be me. She crossed the gantry and she stuck out her hand, that small, soft, 5-fingered hand, and I didn't know what to do with it, so I just looked at it. And she laughed, not cruel, just surprised, and she grabbed my claw and shook it anyway. "Mara Quill," she said, "lead engineer, East Rim. You and me are going to be friends, big guy, because I have got so many questions about how you kept that reactor lit." She glanced up at the ship, and her face did something complicated. Something I'd come to learn was the human look of a craftsman seeing good work done under bad conditions. "Field repairs?" she asked. "With what you had on board?" "With what we had," I said, "and what we could scavenge, and a lot of foam." "A lot of foam," she repeated, and she grinned, and there was a gap in her teeth, and I thought, absurdly, that I had never seen anything so disarming in my life. "Brother, you're speaking my language. Come on. Let's go look at your girl and see what we're working with." Your girl. She meant the ship. She talked about the hollow tide like it was a living thing that deserved care. I talked to that ship like a living thing for years and never told a soul, ashamed of it, and here was a stranger doing it out loud like it was the most natural thing in the world. That was Mara Quill. That was the first human I ever knew. And if you want to understand what comes next, the weapons, the alliance, the turning of the war, you have to understand that it started here. Not with admirals, not with treaties. It started with a small, greasy woman who shook my claw and asked who kept the reactor lit. They put us up. That's the thing I still can't fully explain, even now, even after everything. They just put us up. The humans had a whole section of Anchor 9 they called the yards, and inside the yards they had bunks and mess halls and washrooms, and they opened them to us, all of us. 1,100 Sethari souls, no questions, no fee, no paperwork beyond a head count so they'd know how much to cook. There was a human at the mess line, a big one, broad as a door, with a beard like a thorn bush and arms covered in old scars, and he was ladling soup for my soldiers, personally. Standing there with a great steaming vat of it, slopping it into bowls, telling each soldier as they passed, "Eat slow, if it's been a while, you'll cramp up. Eat slow. There's plenty, you can come back." There's plenty, you can come back. I watched a soldier, a young one, a kid really named Tella who'd lost her whole squad at Senate's Crossing and hadn't spoken a word in days. I watched Tella take a bowl from that bearded human, and I watched her look at the food, and I watched her start to cry. Not loud. Just the tears running down while she held the bowl. And the bearded human, he didn't make a thing of it. He didn't say they're there or are you all right. He just reached out and put one big hand on her shoulder, very gentle, and said, "Yeah, I know, eat slow." I had to leave the mess hall. I'm not ashamed to tell you that. I went and found a quiet stretch of corridor and I put my back against the cold wall and I shook for a while, because 3 years of holding it together had finally found a crack to leak out of, and the crack was kindness. It's always kindness that breaks you in the end. The cruelty you can armor against. The kindness gets in. Mara Quill kept her word. She and I went over the hollow tide deck by deck, and she had a crew of humans with her, and I want to tell you how they worked because I'd never seen anything like it, and I've never seen anything like it since. They were fast, that was part of it. They moved like the work was personal, but it was more than fast, it was clever. They'd look at a problem the way we'd look at it, see the same broken thing we saw, and then they'd do something sideways, something that shouldn't have worked, some bodge or hack or improvisation that no proper engineer would put their name to, and the cursed thing would work. Better than the proper way, half the time. I watched a human girl, couldn't have been more than 19, fix our gravity plating, the same plating that had sung its flat note at me for 2 years, by rewiring it wrong. On purpose. Deliberately wrong in a way that should have fried the whole deck. I started to stop her and Mara put a hand on my arm and said, "Watch." The girl finished. She slapped the panel. The plating hummed and the note was true. Dead true. For the first time in 2 years that deck sang the right note, and the human girl just wiped her hands on her suit and moved on to the next thing like she hadn't done something impossible. "How," I said to Mara, "that should not work." "Yeah," Mara said. "We get that a lot." She was grinning again. She grinned a lot, Mara. "Look, big guy, you Sethari, you build right. I mean it as a compliment. Everything you make is built the right way by the book to last. It's beautiful work. But the book is a cage, you know. Sometimes the right way is dead and the only thing left is the wrong way that works. And we're real good at the wrong way that works. It's kind of our whole thing." I thought about that for a long time. The wrong way that works. It sounded like a flaw when she said it. I'd learned before the end that it was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. It was on the 6th day that everything changed. And it changed because of a question I asked without thinking. We were deep in the hollow tide, Mara and me, in the weapons bay, and she was looking over our turret systems with that craftsman's frown. Our weapons were old. They'd been old before the war, and the war hadn't been kind to them. Standard Sethari pulse cannons, reliable, accurate, and just about useless against the Koran, because the Koran hulls did something we never understood. They ate the pulse, soaked it up, like firing into water. Mara was frowning at the cannon and she said, mostly to herself, "What were you even shooting at out there? These are dialed for a hard target, plated stuff. But you're getting torn up. Your boy at dock control said you came and shot to hell, so whatever's hitting you, your guns aren't hitting back. What's the enemy?" And I told her about the Koran. I didn't mean to make a thing of it. I just told her. The way you tell a fellow engineer about a problem you can't solve. I told her about the hulls that ate our fire, the angles that hurt to look at, the silence, DROVEL reach, and the 6 days of grinding broadcast, SCNET quotes crossing, 3 years of giving ground, the 4 months we had left. I told her the whole thing, standing in the weapons bay, and somewhere in the middle of it, I realized I'd never said all of it out loud before, to anyone, and that the saying of it was the first time I'd really let myself understand how close we were to the end. Mara had stopped working. She was just standing there, this small human, looking up at me, and her face had changed. The grin was gone. Something else was there instead, and at the time I didn't have a name for it, but I do now. It was anger, cold, quiet human anger. Soak the energy, she said. The hulls soak your pulse fire. Yes. Adaptive, reactive material gotta be. It reads the energy signature and tunes itself to dump it. She was talking fast now, more to herself than to me. Clever, real clever. Energy weapons are useless against that. You could dump a sun into it and it'd just. She stopped. She looked up at me. You ever try just throwing a rock at it? I didn't understand. A rock. Mass, she said. A slug, something physical, something heavy moving fast. Their fancy hull soaks energy. What does it do with 3 kilos of tungsten moving at a stupid fraction of lightspeed? You can't soak a rock, veyan. You can soak a laser all day. You can't soak a rock. I stared at her. We don't build weapons like that. Nobody does. Kinetic weapons are, I searched for the word, primitive, crude. Everyone went to energy weapons generations ago. They're cleaner, they're more precise, they're useless against a thing that eats energy, Mara said flatly. Yeah, funny how that works. And then she said something I have thought about every single day of my life since. She said, we never gave up our rocks. I need to tell you about humans and their rocks, because this is the heart of it. This is the thing the galaxy didn't understand about them until it was far, far too late. Every species I'd ever heard of had done the same thing as us. We'd climbed the same ladder. You start with rocks and sticks, you move up to blades, then to chemical weapons that throw a slug, then to energy weapons, and once you've got energy weapons you throw away the old stuff, because why wouldn't you? The new thing is better. The slug throwers go in a museum. Everyone does this. It's just progress. It's the natural order. Everyone did this except the humans. The humans climbed the same ladder. They got energy weapons same as everyone. But they never threw away the bottom rungs. They kept the rocks. They kept the slug throwers. They refined them, kept making them better, kept them in service, kept whole industries alive, building bigger and faster and meaner ways to throw a heavy thing at another thing. Where everyone else saw a dead end, a primitive stage to grow out of, the humans saw a tool worth keeping sharp. They had energy weapons and they had kinetic weapons, and they'd never once made the choice everyone else made, the choice to leave the rocks behind. When Mara explained it to me, I asked her why. Why would they keep something so crude when the better thing existed? She thought about it. She actually thought about it, which I'd come to learn was a human thing too. They'd stop and actually consider a question instead of giving you the easy answer. And then she said, because the better thing isn't always better, depends what you're hitting, she shrugged. And honestly, because we're cheap and we're stubborn and we don't like throwing stuff away. My granddad used to say, never get rid of a working tool just because you got a shinier one. The shiny one breaks, you'll want the old one back. She grinned. Turns out my granddad was right about more than he knew. A working tool. Never throw away a working tool. The HFY had built the perfect defense against the entire galaxy, against every energy weapon every civilized species had ever made. They'd read the galaxy correctly. Everyone went to energy weapons. So they built a hull that ate energy weapons, and they were invincible, and they'd been carving through us for 3 years, because they'd correctly understood that nobody still threw rocks. Nobody except the one young, cheap, stubborn species that never threw away a working tool. Mara didn't sleep that night, neither did I. She'd gone quiet after the weapons bay, that cold, quiet anger still on her, and she'd said she had to go talk to someone, and she'd gone, and I'd assumed that was the end of it. A nice idea from a kind woman. Throw rocks at the HFY. It would go in the great book of things people had suggested over 3 years of dying, most of them useless. But around the middle of the night cycle, a runner came to my bunk, a human kid, breathless. Mara wants you, the big drafting hall, now. I went. The drafting hall was a wide room on the human levels, and when I came in, it was full of light and noise and humans. A dozen of them, maybe more, around a great table that glowed with schematics, an MARA at the center of it with her sleeves shoved up and her hair coming loose, and she looked up when I came in and her eyes were burning. "VYAN," she said, "get in here, tell me if this is stupid." She showed me the table. I didn't understand it at first. It was a weapon system, that much I could see, but it was nothing like our cannons. There was a long rail, magnetic coils stacked along its length, and a feed system, and MARA was talking fast, gesturing, and the other humans were throwing in comments, arguing, correcting, building the thing right there in front of me out of light and argument. "COILGUN," she said, "mass driver. We use these for mining, for cargo, for," she waved a hand, "lots of stuff. But militarized, scaled to a ship turret, fed tungsten or depleted heavy metal slugs, and you're throwing mass at a fat fraction of LIGHTSPED. Their hull eats energy. It can't eat this. This is just a rock, VYAN. The biggest, fastest, meanest rock anyone's ever thrown. And here's the thing," she stabbed the schematic. "It bolts onto your existing turret mounts, your HARDPOINTS. We measured your ship. The mounts are standard, near enough, we can shim the difference. We can rip out your dead pulse cannons and bolt these on, and your ship doesn't even know the difference, except suddenly it can punch a hole through anything in the galaxy." I looked at the schematic. I looked at the humans around the table, all of them looking at me, waiting. "You designed this tonight," I said. "We adapted it tonight," MARA corrected. "The guts are old, real old. We've had COILGUNS since before we had starships. We just," she shrugged, that human shrug, "dusted one off, scaled it, made it fit your boat." She leaned forward and the burning was back in her eyes. "Tell me if it's stupid, VEYAN. You're the one who's actually fought these things. You're the one whose people are dying, so you tell me, is it stupid?" I thought about DROVEL Reach, the 6 days of grinding broadcast. I thought about my cousin who could sing. I thought about TELLA crying over a bowl of soup. I thought about 3 years of firing into water. "No," I said. My voice came out strange. "No, it's not stupid. It might be the least stupid thing I've heard in 3 years." The drafting hall erupted. The humans, I swear to you, the humans cheered. Not for themselves, for us. For a chance to throw rocks at the thing that was killing us. They cheered like it was their war, and I stood there in the middle of it, this dying man from a dying world, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. I felt it before I could name it. It started small in my chest. It took me a moment to recognize it. It had been gone so long. Hope, the thing I felt was hope. But I'm getting ahead of myself, and I promised you I'd tell it straight. A schematic on a glowing table is not a weapon. A clever idea in a drafting hall is not a war one. There was a long, hard, bitter road between that night and the day the songs sing about, and I'm going to walk you down every step of it, because the easy version, the humans gave us guns and we won, is a lie. It wasn't a gift. It was work. The hardest work I've ever done, and the best. The first problem was that nobody believed it, not our people. When word reached Captain RESH that her exhausted engineer had spent the night with the humans designing primitive slug throwers to replace our cannons, she summoned me, and her one clear eye was not kind. "Kinetic weapons," she said. "VYAN, you're a serious man, you're the best engineer I've got, and you come to me with rocks. You want me to let these humans rip the guns off my ship and bolt on rocks?" "Yes," I said. "We left rocks behind before my grandmother's grandmother was hatched." "Yes," I said. "So did everyone. That's the point, Captain. That's exactly the point. The Corran built their hull to beat the thing everyone uses. They never built it to beat the thing everyone threw away." She was quiet a long time. That dangerous Captain Resh quiet, where you don't know if you're about to be promoted or shot out an airlock. "And if you're wrong," she said finally, "I've spent the last weeks of my people's existence letting strangers gut our last ship for a child's idea." "And if I'm right," I said, "we have a way to kill them. The only way anyone's found in 3 years. Captain, we have 4 months. We're going to die in 4 months, whether I'm right or wrong. The only question is whether we die having tried the one thing nobody's tried. I took a breath. Let me be wrong cheaply. Let them refit one turret. One, test it. If it doesn't work, you've lost one gun on a ship that's already lost the war. If it does. I didn't finish. I didn't have to. Captain Resch looked at me with that clouded eye and that clear one. And the old woman who never showed anything showed something then. Just for a moment. Something tired and frightened and faintly, terribly hopeful. One turret, she said. Show me a rock can kill a god vae and tall. Show me, and I'll tear every other gun off this ship myself. It took 9 days to refit the first turret. 9 days of Mara's crew and my crew working side by side, and I want to tell you it went smoothly, that human and Sethari hands worked in beautiful harmony, but the truth is we fought the whole time. Not with fists, with ideas. The humans wanted to do everything the fast way, the clever way, the wrong way that works, and it offended my engineers down to their bones. We wanted to build it right, to the book, to last. It doesn't need to last forever, a human named Diego kept saying, throwing his hands up. It needs to last one fight, stop gold-plating it. And if it fails in the second fight, my deputy, an old stubborn engineer named Sewell, would shoot back. What then, human? You'll be light years away and we'll be dead. You'll be dead anyway if it's not ready, Diego would say, and round we'd go. And here's the thing, they were both right. That's what I learned in those 9 days. The human way and the Sethari way were both right, and the magic, the actual magic, was in the place where they ground against each other. The humans made us faster. We made them better. They'd bodge something that worked, and we'd take their bodge and build it right, build it to last, and the thing that came out the other end was better than either of us could have made alone. The first coilgun turret on the Hollow Tide was an ugly, beautiful, half-human, half-Sethari monster, and on the 9th day we test-fired it. We'd towed a wrecked hull out beyond the station, a dead Kelt freighter the humans had been stripping for parts, plated tough, the closest thing to a hard target we had. Captain Resch was on the bridge. Mara was beside me in the turret control, practically vibrating. The whole Hollow Tide crew was watching on every screen, and a fair number of humans too. Word had gotten around the station, and the docks were lined with onlookers from 40 species, all of them come to watch the dirt crawler's crazy idea fail. I want to tell you about the firing, because I'll remember it when I've forgotten my own name. There was no sound, of course. There's no sound in the black. But there was a feeling, a deep thrum that came up through the deck and into my feet and into my teeth, as the coils dumped their charge and threw 3 kilos of tungsten at a speed I still don't entirely believe. The slug crossed the gap to the wrecked freighter faster than the eye could follow. And the freighter, the tough, plated dead Kelt freighter, came apart. Not blew up, not the bright clean flash of an energy weapon. The slug went through it, in one side and out the other and out the far wall of the wreck behind it, and the freighter just folded, crumpled, tore itself open along the line of force, spinning away in pieces, and for a moment there was just stunned silence on every channel. Then the docks erupted. I heard it through the hull. 40 species, and the loudest of all were the humans, and I turned to look at Mara, and Mara was crying and laughing at the same time, that absurd, soft, breakable little creature, and she grabbed my arm with both hands and she said, "You can't soak a rock, Vayan. You can't soak a rock." On the bridge, Captain Resch watched the freighter come apart, and the bridge crew watched her, waiting. And the old woman who never showed anything, who'd led us through 3 years of dying without once breaking. Captain Resch put her face in her hands just for a moment. Just one moment. And then she straightened up, and she keyed the shipwide channel, and her voice came through every speaker on the Hollow Tide, steady as iron. "All engineering crews, you will report to the weapons bays. We are tearing every gun off this ship." A pause, and then softer in a way none of us had ever heard from her. "We are going to throw rocks at God." That's where I have to stop the first part of this telling, because what came next deserves its own breath, And because if I don't stop now, I'll talk all night and you've got to sleep sometime. But before I go, I want you to sit with something. The galaxy had written us off. Every old, proud, advanced species had done the math on the Sethari and decided we weren't worth saving. And they'd done the math on the humans too, looked at this young, soft, scrappy little species that kept its rocks and its bodges and its stubborn refusal to throw away a working tool, and they'd decided the humans were quaint, primitive, behind the times. They were wrong about us. They were wrong about the humans. And they were about to find out exactly how wrong, because 1,100 dying Sethari, armed with the oldest weapon in the galaxy, refitted by the only species clever enough to keep it, were about to turn around and go home. Not to die well. To win. But that the going home, the war, the day at home that the songs sing about, that's the next part of the story. Eat slow, there's plenty, you can come back. So you came back, good. I told you there was more. Pour yourself something. This part of the telling is the hard middle, the part where the easy version says, and then the humans armed us and we won, and skips over everything that actually mattered. I'm not going to skip it. I owe these people too much to skip it. When I left off, Captain Resh had just told us we were going to throw rocks at God. One turret had proven it could be done. But one turret on one tired freighter isn't a fleet. And we didn't have a fleet anymore, not really. We had scraps. We had what had limped to Anchor 9 and what was still scattered across the dark, hiding, waiting to die. And we had 4 months, maybe less. What we did next should not have been possible. Let me tell you about the night Captain Resh and Mara Quill first sat down together, because that night decided everything, and almost nobody knows it happened. I was there because Mara wanted me there. She said she needed someone who could translate, and she didn't mean the language. The station handled language fine. The humans had translator units that worked better than anything we'd ever built. What Mara meant was that she needed someone who could translate us to her, and her to us, in the deeper way. The way where you explain why your captain went quiet, or why a human shrugged when she should have saluted. So the three of us sat in a small room off the drafting hall, and there was a pot of the bitter human drink, coffee, they called it, and I drank it that night for the first time, and I have not stopped since. It's a vice I picked up from them along with everything else, and for a while nobody said anything. It was Captain Resh who broke it. She looked at Mara across the table, this small, soft human half her age and half her size, and she said the thing she'd clearly been holding all day. Why are you doing this? Mara looked up. Doing what? Any of it. Resh's clear eye was fixed and hard. You don't know us. We have nothing to give you. We can't pay. Half my fleet is dust and the other half is hiding. By every measure your people use, we are a bad investment. You should have patched our hull, charged us what we couldn't afford, and waved us off to die like everyone else did. Instead, you've turned your station into a war factory for a people you met 9 days ago. She leaned forward. I have led soldiers for 60 years, human. Nobody does something for nothing, so I'm asking you plainly, what do you want? And Mara, I watched her. I watched her face. Mara didn't get offended. And she didn't get defensive, and she didn't give the slick answer. She did that human thing where she actually thought about it, took her time, turned the cup in her hands. You know what we are out here, she said finally. On Anchor 9, you know what this place actually is. A repair station. Sure, on paper. Mara's mouth twisted. We're the kids, Captain, in the galaxy. We came up 40 years ago, clawed our way out of one dirty little planet, and we got our seat at the table, and you know what we found when we sat down. We found a table full of old, rich, careful people who'd all decided a long time ago exactly how much everyone was worth. Down to the decimal. The Dovrin worth this. The Celt worth that. And us, she laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Us they hadn't even bothered to price yet. We were too new, too poor, too small. We sat down at that table, and every old species there looked at us the exact same way they looked at you when you came and shot to hell. Like a math problem, like a cost. She set the cup down. So we built this place. Out here on the edge of nothing where the old families don't bother to look. And we made one rule, everybody comes in. Doesn't matter who you are or what you can pay or whether the math says you're worth it. You come broken, we fix you. Because somebody decided we weren't worth fixing once, and we remember how that felt, and we swore we'd never be the ones doing the math on somebody else. She looked Resh dead in the eye. That's what I want, Captain. I want to not be them. That's the whole thing. That's all of it. You came to my door dying, and I'm not going to be the one who does the math on you. The room was very quiet. Captain Resh looked at this small human for a long, long moment. And then she did something I had never once seen her do, not in 3 years, not in all the dying. She bowed her head, fully. The old soldier, the Iron Woman, bowed her head to a greasy 19. Well, she wasn't 19, but she looked it. To a small human engineer across a table of coffee, in the deep formal bow that we Sethari give only to the dead and the worthy. Then you have an ally, Mara Quill, she said. For whatever the scraps of my people are worth, you have an ally until the stars go cold. I had to translate the bow after. Mara didn't know what it meant. When I told her, she went quiet too, and she rubbed her face and she said, "Right, okay then." And then she stood up and clapped her hands and said, "Well, can't bolt guns on with our feelings. Let's go to work." And that was Mara, that was exactly Mara, but I saw her wipe her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. The work, let me tell you about the work, because the work was everything. Refitting one turret had taken 9 days. We did not have 9 days per turret to spare. We had a whole fleet to arm and 4 months to do it in, and the fleet wasn't even all there yet. So we did what neither species could have done alone. We built a system. The humans were the ones who broke the back of the problem, and they did it with a word I'd never heard before. Assembly line. Standardize the parts. Standardize the steps. Stop building each turret like a custom work of art and start building them like Mara put it, like making 1,000 of the same loaf of bread instead of 1,000 different cakes. It went against everything in my engineer's heart. Everything. We Sethari build each thing for its place, fitted and tuned and unique. The idea of stamping out identical parts and bolting them on without tuning each one to its ship, it felt like sacrilege. It felt lazy. And it worked so well it made me dizzy. By the 3rd week, we'd cut the refit time from 9 days to 2. By the 6th week, with a Sethari crew that had learned the human tricks and human crews that had learned the Sethari standards, we were turning around a full warship refit in under a day. We had Sethari and humans working the same lines, side by side, and the fights had mostly stopped. Not because anybody won the argument, but because we'd stopped having it, because we'd built something together that was better than either side's stubbornness. And the ships kept coming. That's the part that still gets me, even now. Word got out. Across the scattered remnants of the Sethari fleet, across the hidden refugee convoys, across every dark corner where our people were waiting to die, word got out that there was a station at the edge of nothing where the humans were arming Sethari ships with weapons that could kill Koran. And they came. One by one, then in 2s and 3s, then in whole battered convoys, every ship that could still fly limping across the Quell expanse to Anchor 9. And the humans took them all in, fed them, bunked them, armed them, no questions, no fees. 1,100 Sethari became 3,000, became 8,000, became, by the end, over 30,000 souls, a whole people reassembling itself in a human junkyard at the edge of the dark. I asked Mara once late, both of us exhausted, where the parts were even coming from. The tungsten, the metal, the coils, you can't arm a fleet on goodwill. She gave me a tired grin, called in favors. Every human settlement in 20 light years is shipping us scrap and slugs. We put the word out. She rubbed her eyes. And okay, don't tell your captain this, some of it's not exactly paid for yet. We're gonna owe some people. We're gonna owe a lot of people, she shrugged. Worth it. You're putting your whole people in debt, I said, for us. Yeah, well. She looked out the viewport at the wheel of the station and the ships docked all along its rim, Sethari ships, bristling now with ugly, beautiful coil guns. Somebody did the math on you and said no. We're doing the math on you and saying yes, cost what it costs. Costs what it costs. I have tried to be a man who lives by those 3 words ever since. Now, I have to tell you about the humans who chose to come with us, because you need to understand that this was never just guns and parts. It became something more, and it became more because of a few people who made a choice they didn't have to make. When the fleet was nearly ready, when we had, against all sense, a war fleet again, 60-some warships armed with weapons the Koran had never faced, Captain Resh gathered what was left of our admirals and we made our plan. We would go home. Back across the Quell, back to the Sethari worlds, to home itself, the cradle world, where the last and largest Koran force was gathered to finish us. The Koran had home surrounded. They'd been there for weeks in no hurry. Why hurry? We were finished. They were simply tightening the noose, picking off the last defenders, preparing to do to home what they'd done to Droval Reach. We had perhaps 2 weeks before they moved in for the kill. The plan was madness. 60 ships against the largest Koran fleet ever assembled. By every law of war we should lose. But we had one thing the Koran didn't know we had, one thing that changed every calculation. We had rocks, and they didn't know it yet, and surprise is a weapon all its own. When the plan was set, Mara came to find me, and she said, "We're coming with you." I didn't understand. Who? Me, my crew, volunteers from the station. She said it like it was obvious. You think we built these guns and we're just gonna wave you off and hope it works out? No chance. The coil guns are new tech for you. They're gonna jam, they're gonna misfeed, they're gonna do things in real combat that they never did on the test range, and when they do, you're gonna want a human who's been throwing rocks her whole life standing right there next to your gun crews. She crossed her arms. We're coming. It's not up for debate. I already cleared it with your captain. This isn't your war, I said. You've already given us everything. You don't have to die for us too. And Mara looked at me, and she said the thing I think about most of all, out of everything from those days. She said, "Vayan, you don't get to do the math on me, that's the whole point. Nobody at that table gets to decide who's worth dying for. I decide, and I've decided." She poked me in the chest with one small finger. "You'd come for us. If it was our homeworld with the noose around it and you had the guns, you'd come. I know you would, so shut up and let me help." I didn't have an answer for that. There wasn't one. She was right. So when the Sethari fleet finally pulled away from Anchor 9, 63 warships, every one of them armed with the oldest weapon in the galaxy, refitted by the youngest species in it, there were humans aboard every single ship. 240 volunteers. Engineers, gun crews, medics, a few who were just stubborn and wanted to be there. They'd left their station, their families, their safe, quiet edge of nowhere, to cross the Quell expanse and fight a war that wasn't theirs. The bearded man from the soup line, his name was Bo, he was aboard the Hollow Tide, and when I asked him why, this big scarred man who'd ladled soup for my soldiers, he just shrugged and said, "Can't feed somebody for 3 weeks and then watch 'em go off to die alone. Wouldn't sit right." And that was the whole of his reasoning. Wouldn't sit right. I have heard admirals give worse reasons for war. The crossing back across the Quell expanse was different from the crossing out. The first time we'd crossed it as beggars, dying, fleeing, the reactor groaning and the droval look on every face. This time we crossed it as a fleet, armed, fed, repaired. 63 ships in formation, and the reactor on the Hollow Tide purred like it was new because Mara's people had rebuilt it the wrong way that works, and it would outlive me. But it wasn't easy, and I won't pretend it was. 11 days of dark again. 11 days of knowing what waited at the end of it. The closer we got to home, the quieter the fleet got. Soldiers checked their weapons too many times. Gun crews ran drills until their claws bled. There's a particular silence that settles over people heading into a fight they expect to lose, and we had it, all of us, Sethari and human alike. I spent those days in the weapons bays mostly, with Mara and Sewell and the human gun crews. drilling the coil guns until the crews could clear a jam in the dark with their eyes closed. And I spent the nights, when I couldn't sleep, which was most of them, sitting with Mara in the turret control, drinking the bitter coffee, talking. She told me about Earth, about a sky that was blue, which I couldn't picture, and water you could swim in, and a moon that her grandmother used to point at. She told me about her granddad, the one who said never throw away a working tool, and how he died before humans ever left their system, never knowing his people would make it to the stars. She told me she'd never expected to die anywhere but Anchor 9, in a bunk old, and that the idea of dying in a Sethari turret throwing rocks at an alien god was, in her words, honestly kind of metal, which the translator rendered as a compliment and which I chose to believe was one. And I told her about us, about my cousin who could sing, about Droval Reach, about what it does to a people to be written off to spend 3 years learning to expect nothing. She listened to all of it, the way she listened to everything fully like it mattered. On the 10th night, the night before we'd reach home, she said, "You scared?" "Yes," I said. There was no point lying to Mara. "Me too." She turned the coffee cup in her hands. "For what it's worth, though, and I mean this, I'm not sorry. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm not sorry we came." She looked at me. "We did a good thing, Vayan, whatever happens. We did a good thing and we did it right, and there's not a lot of people in this galaxy who can say that. So." She lifted the cup, a human gesture I'd learned. "To the good thing." I lifted mine, to the good thing. We drank the bitter drink, in the turret, in the dark, 11 hours out from the largest battle of the war. We came out of the dark at the edge of the home system, and we saw what we were facing, and even with everything, even with the guns and the hope, my heart went cold. The Corin fleet was enormous. I'd known it would be. Knowing is not the same as seeing. They filled the space between us and home like a stain, hundreds of those wrong-angled hulls, more ships than our whole fleet by a factor I didn't want to count, and beyond them, small and blue-green and unbearably precious, was home itself, the cradle world, where everyone I'd ever loved who was still alive was waiting to die. The Corin saw us, of course they did, and here is the thing I will remember until I die: they didn't react. They saw 63 Sethari ships come out of the dark and they did nothing. No scramble, no panic, no shift in formation, because to them we were already accounted for. We were the last of the dying, come home to die, and they'd already done the math. 63 more ships changed nothing. They knew exactly how this went. They were so sure of the math that they let us come. On the bridge of the hollow tide, Captain Resh stood very still, her clear eye fixed on the enemy fleet, and she opened a channel to every ship in our fleet, and to home below. She didn't make a long speech. That wasn't her, she said. "Sethari, people of home, for 3 years we have run. For 3 years the galaxy has done its arithmetic and found us wanting. Today we stop running. Today we have weapons they have never seen, given to us by friends who owed us nothing." A pause. "They are going to expect us to die. Let us disappoint them. All ships load mass. Hold fire until my mark. And steady, steady, we throw on my word." Then she closed the fleet channel, and she opened a private one to the humans, all 240 of them scattered through the fleet. And the Iron Woman said one more thing, quiet just for them. "Children of Earth, I cannot give you back what this day may cost you. I can only tell you that for as long as a single Sethari draws breath, your names will be sung in our halls. You came to our door when we were dying and you did not do the math. Whatever comes, thank you. Now man your guns." And from somewhere in the fleet on the open human channel, I heard Bo's voice, that big scarred soup-ladling man, and he said gruff, "Wouldn't sit right any other way, Captain." And the humans laughed. Across 63 ships, on the edge of the largest battle of the war, the humans laughed, and somehow it steadied us more than any speech could have. We closed the distance. The Corin waited until we were in range, their range, energy weapon range, the range at which they'd slaughtered us 100 times, and then they fired. I was in the turret with Mara when the first salvo hit. The whole ship rang. The core and fire was the same as it had always been, the same terrible cutting energy that had carved through us for 3 years, and a part of me, the part that had learned in 3 years to expect death, braced for the end. But Mara's people had rebuilt the hollow tide, the wrong way that works. They'd layered the hull, added ablative plating salvaged from 40 wrecks, rebuilt the shield emitters with human bodges that shouldn't have worked and did. The fire that should have gutted us scarred us instead, hurt us, made us bleed, but didn't kill us. We held. For the first time in 3 years, we took a Corin salvo and we held. And across the fleet channel I heard the disbelief in our crew's voices, the dawning realization, and Captain Resh's voice cut through it, hard and clear. Steady, closer, they're firing energy because that's all they know. Let them, closer, closer, gun crews on my mark. We crossed into kinetic range, the range no one had used in generations. The range the Corin didn't even know was a range, because nobody threw rocks. Mark and 63 Sethari ships threw God a rock. I have tried many times to describe what the first kinetic salvo looked like, and I always fail, so I'll just tell you what I saw and you can build it in your own head. There was no light. That was the strangeness of it. We'd grown up with war as light, the bright, clean flash of energy weapons, beautiful and useless. This was nothing. This was the deep thrum through the deck, 63 times over all at once, and then the Corin fleet came apart. Not all of it, not in one salvo, but where our slugs hit, the wrong-angled hulls that had eaten our fire for 3 years did exactly what Mara had promised. Nothing. They couldn't soak a rock. The slugs went through them. Through the adaptive hull, through whatever was inside, out the far side, and the Corin ships folded and tore and tumbled, venting whatever the Corin breathed into the dark, dead before they understood they could die. The fleet channel exploded. 3 years of dying, 3 years of firing into water, 3 years of the droval look, all of it broke at once, and it came out as a sound I'd never heard from my people, a roar, a howl, 30,000 throats and 240 human voices all crying out together as the invincible enemy died in front of us. Reload, Captain Resh roared over it. Reload and throw again, don't stop. Gun crews, throw until your arms fall off, throw. And we threw. I won't lie to you and say it was easy after that. It wasn't. This is the hard middle, remember, and the hard middle has a price, and we paid it. The Corin were not stupid. Cruel, alien, silent, but not stupid. After the first salvo tore through them, after they understood in whatever way they understood things, that the dying species had brought a weapon they had no defense against, they did the only thing they could do. They closed. They charged. They knew their energy weapons could still hurt us, knew that up close in the chaos even rocks miss, and so they came at us with everything, trying to overwhelm us before we could throw enough to win. And ships died. Ours. I have to tell you that. The songs make it sound clean, and it was not clean. The Velt's promise died with all hands when 3 Corin ships rammed it at once. The Sunward lost half its crew to a hull breach. I watched, on the tactical display, as Sethari ships I knew, ships I'd refitted with my own claws, winked out, and every one of them was people I'd fed beside and bunked beside and crossed the dark with. And the humans died too. That's the part that I carry. They didn't have to be there, and they died there. A human gun crew on the Sunward held their turret-feeding slugs through the hull breach until the decompression took them, and they bought the ship the seconds it needed to throw the salvo that killed the Corin that had breached them. They traded their lives for it, knowing they were trading, and they made the trade for a people they'd known for weeks. I learned their names afterward. I made sure of it. Every human who died that day, I learned their names, and they are sung in our halls, every one exactly as Captain Resh promised. I will not list them all here. It would take the rest of the night, but know that I could. Know that I carry every one. The fight at the edge of the home system lasted 4 hours. 4 hours of throwing rocks at God. 4 hours of reloading until claws and hands alike were raw and bleeding. 4 hours of the dead piling up on both sides while home hung blue-green and precious below us. The Koran fought to the last. They did not surrender. I don't think they had a concept for it. They came at us until there was nothing left to come, and we threw rocks at them until the throwing was done. And in the 4th hour, the Koran fleet, the largest force they had ever assembled, the noose around our cradle world, the thing that was meant to end us, broke. It broke the way a wave breaks. All at once, after holding so long you think it never will. One moment they were a stain across the stars, and the next they were scattered, fleeing, the survivors burning hard for the dark past the Velvet Drift, where they'd come from, 3 years and a lifetime ago. We let them go. We didn't have the strength to chase, and Captain Resh, wise even in victory, knew that a cornered enemy fights hardest, and a fleeing one is best left to flee. We held our line between the broken Koran and home, and we watched them run. And slowly, the fleet channel went from the roar of battle to something quieter, something like weeping, something like prayer. I was in the turret with Mara. We'd thrown rocks for 4 hours. My claws were raw. Her hands were bleeding through the gloves. We were both deaf in one ear from the thrum. And when the last Koran ship vanished into the dark, neither of us cheered. We just sat there in the wreck of the turret, surrounded by spent slug casings, and Mara reached over and took my raw bleeding claw in her raw bleeding hand, and she didn't say anything, and neither did I, because there wasn't anything to say that the silence didn't say better. Below us home was still there, blue-green, precious, alive. We'd done it. The dying species had thrown rocks at God and lived. But here is the thing the songs don't tell you. The thing I have to tell you before this part is done, because it's the truest thing in the whole telling. The fight at home was a victory, but it wasn't the victory. Not yet. Because the Koran weren't finished, they'd fled, not died, and a fled enemy comes back. And the galaxy that had done the math on us, all those old, proud, careful species who'd written us off, they'd seen what happened at home. They'd seen the dying species turn around with the youngest species' oldest weapon and break the unbreakable enemy. And the galaxy was about to have to decide what to do about that. That's the last part of the story. The part after the battle. The part where everything we'd built together, Sethari and human, the wrong way and the right way ground together into something new, got tested in a way that guns couldn't answer. But the coffee's gone cold, and so have my old bones, and that part deserves a fresh telling. Come back one more time. I'll finish it, I promise. We did a good thing. Whatever came after, and a lot came after, we did a good thing, and we did it right. To the good thing.